Hello and welcome to League of Legends patch 14.6, the game where everything changes, nothing stays the same, and anything you like will eventually be gone. As always, my name is Chris, and unfortunately I will once again be doing another solo one of these videos. Hopefully Jason will get off his lazy ass and come back again. It's getting increasingly difficult to get a full day's work out of him. Alright, let's move on to the changes here. We got a bit of a shorter patch. Hopefully I can blow through this thing in like 20 minutes or something. Alright, let's see for the systems. Yep, no DirectX 9. We got some ARAM Clash coming up. I always find that kind of fun. Yeah, let's just skip. We'll talk about these bots. Alright, first up we got Briar. Very turbulent champ in terms of changing since she's come out. Now she can use her Q, which is her little mini dash effect, on wards and traps. That definitely is kind of increased utility for sure. Now it's going to kind of function just like Jax or Lee Sin or old Katarina. So that's definitely interesting they allowed that to gave it that extra functionality. Now we got Blood Frenzy here, just an attack speed reduction. Not too bad, all things considered. She's still a pretty strong champion. I honestly really like the change to her passive to encourage tank builds. I honestly think it's a way more fun way of playing her. And the number of times I have played her, I've actually really enjoyed just going like a super fat slob build. It's in her passive scaling, new scaling on health now. It's so strong. It's just more fun for me personally than playing a really glass cannon build. And then next, the healing reduced on her second part of her, what is this, her W? Yeah, her W attack. This thing's been nerfed like 8 times. It's still good. It's still really good when she's low, and it'll still be good. I think it was like 60 at one point. And then the base damage on her ultimate took a bit of a hit at higher ranks. Not really a big deal. It's not really about the damage. It's just about the like stick potential. So honestly, they could probably remove the damage component on this altogether, and it wouldn't really be a big issue. It's all about the fear component and just the gap closing. Next, we got some rare changes to Cho'Gath. In my opinion, he's one of the most balanced champions in the game. We've got a less cooldown on, or lower cooldown on his silence. That's his W. Early on, when you see a change like this, it makes me think like they probably most people think you max. You could honestly have a case for maxing any of his abilities first. They're that versatile. Like for his W, you max it first as high flat damage, and you basically can't dodge it. But the mana cost is kind of steep. Personally, in the mid lane, I like to max his E first. It just makes it last hitting a lot easier. It's like super hard to trade with him with an E max. Sure, Q is awesome because the base damage is ridiculous, but this kind of makes me think it's more about a Q or E max having a lower cooldown than W, and then the Vorpal Spikes on his E is getting a pretty generous buff. Still the same at level 1 though, which is kind of funny. But a nice little generous chunk of damage over the course of this. Be honest, I'm not really familiar enough with the numbers on this. We're going to check real quick if this is the total damage or the damage per hit. Let's see, 22 to 70. Oh no, that is actually the damage per hit. So overall, over the 3 attacks, this is definitely generous. Alright, next up we've got Diana. We got less attack speed, less attack speed, less attack speed. It's kind of a shame because when she's like finished doing her suicide kit, the only thing she really can do as like auxiliary damage is just attack with like her passive. She has like This new ultimate she got has turned her into such like a suicide kit champion. Such a powerful ultimate. She's such a strong champion. But kind of one-dimensional at the moment. I wouldn't be surprised if she got a rework in the next 3 or 4 years, to be honest. I feel like they could do a lot with her. Kind of similar to she honestly functions a lot like Akali did before Akali's rework, so I wouldn't be surprised to see them do something like that. Yeah, just less attack speed. Alright, next up we got some interesting changes here for Galio. Definitely a lot to go over. I'm not going to go over all these changes, but the gist of it is his passive, where he gets that modified auto attack, nowhere near as consistent anymore as it used to be, where it basically was up 2, maybe even 3 times per minion wave, and it was just a very consistent wave clearing and trading tool. Now you still got to hit people. It's like it used to be in the old times, where you hit people with an ability to reduce the cooldown. No longer gets affected by ability haste. It's doing less damage, has less scaling. I guess it moves faster. I mean, all in all, this has to be a nerf, basically. Unless there's something I'm not seeing. Maybe, I don't know. Static cooldown. Yeah, so I guess before you could just always have a low cooldown. I don't know. That one's not really too important. Anyway, we've got a cool reduction on his Q, which definitely feels like it needs a bit more uptime. And boy, does this cooldown, or this ability, let's go look. What's the mana cost on this thing? This thing has always been a fucking cow, or slog, or hog of a mana cost. What do we got? 70 to 90? Yeah, he just cannot fucking afford that. This thing needs to be more like 40 to 60 or something. If that. Or just 50 at all ranks. He really needs that to be cheaper, to be honest. And then we got a little less damage to make up for that. And now the big changes with his Shield of Duran. This is kind of his ability that's supposed to be kind of a throwback to his anti-magic damage theme of the old Galio. I really feel like his kit doesn't really lean as much into it. Alright, so the gist of it is less base damage, and then basically less of everything. Less reduction, basically less incentivized base numbers on everything, less AP ratios for magic and physical damage, less scaling for AP ratio, or for MR into physical and magic damage reduction. Now, the thing is, all of this is going to be offset by the new health scaling on his W. And we're starting, this is the 3rd time we've seen this now. It started with Briar, where to give her a chance to build more tanky, they add a health scaling on her passive. And then we saw it with Kayn, where Ross got a health scaling on his passive. Now, obviously those are 2 sustained champions, but they're health scalings that were thrown into something that gave them a much generous incentive to build tankier, and this is definitely a great change. I like this. I haven't really stared at this for several minutes to see how the math would play out, but for the moment I'm going to assume that you can very quickly surpass the old numbers of these nerfs by some bonus health. Not to mention the fact, oh, this is bonus health. I was about to say that Galio actually has the most HP at level 18 in the game, next to I forget it. Ryze, Silas, Kled, and Galio have the most HP in the game at 18 or something. But that's base health, this is bonus health. But anyway, yeah, this should definitely be pretty nice. I mean, you can have 20%, so think of 2,000 bonus health. That's not really too hard to get to. That's 20%, and we lost only lost 5% and 2.5% off this. So throw another 20 on there and 10 on there, since the health scaling's half as much for physical damage. Yeah, definitely interesting. I really like the change. It's really incentivizes you to build like Cinder or Heartsteel, because now you can just build maximum slob and still have essentially bonus resistances through more health now, which is cool. Honestly, you probably should have always had a health scaling on this. Now, if only there was a health scaling on the MR shield that he gets from not taking damage, that would be fucking awesome. And then lastly, we got less damage on his Justice Punch on his E. That's probably fine. It's not really about the damage, it's just about the gap closer and the knockup. I like how they really nerfed this as a wave clear tool. It only does 20% damage against minions. That's pretty fucking silly. Alright, let's see, nothing there. We got less health on Gragas, oh yay. And then more mana on Barrel Balls. Whatever, not too much. Then we got a giant nerf here for Karma. She's kind of... I kind of feel like there's been a resurgence in like the golden age of mid Karma once again. A combination of like the access to all of the ability haste in the game, at least before the mythics went out the window. Now I think there's been a bit less of a golden age. It's harder to stack ability haste at the moment. But the big thing is as long as Ultimate Hunter has been in the game, Ultimate Hunter has really made her ultimate like super strong, like much stronger than most people's ultimate, as it just lets her repeat her mantra ability so many times. And this is a pretty serious nerf she's getting here, like just across the whole board. I mean, this is devastating for support Karma, but I think it's even worse for mid Karma, which just is able to leverage this stuff a lot more. We guys got less mana, more mana growth, whoop-de-doo. Then the big thing right here, we got less cooldown reduction, a whole extra second. Now I know it's 1 second, but yeah, Jason be quick to point out this is a 20% nerf. Yeah, it is, but this is a huge deal, because like late game you could literally just mantra Q a couple people and that would instantly refresh your mantra Q again. That's how busted she was with things like Ultimate Hunter and like some other cooldown reduction items. It's super good. And we'll skip right down here to the actual ultimate. And now this not only did they nerf the passive, but they nerfed the ultimate cooldown too. It still starts at 40, but now it caps out at less than 3 seconds more than it was before. Yeah, so this is just very depressing. You're definitely not going to get those, be in those scenarios as much now that you used to, where you'd get the mantra Q and then immediately it would automatically ready another mantra Q because you hit like 2 or 3 people or something. Those scenarios are now going to be few and far between, which is a real bummer. And as if that wasn't bad enough, now the mana cost has hit the fucking roof on her Q. Yeah, doubling the mana cost on someone's spammable ability, yeah, that's pretty psycho. Fucking 45 to 80, hella crazy. And then just insult to injury, now just increasing the base numbers on the extra shield, or reducing it by 50, but now it's 5 less overall. I don't know. Whatever. She's one of my most played champions, honestly, but I don't know. I haven't played her as much the last like year or so as I used to. Big bummer though. Huge nerf. Alright, next up we've got Kayn. I didn't even know you could people were using item actives during his Q super effectively. I don't know which item active was super annoying to use during his thing. It wouldn't be surprised me though if it was some way to make his Q animation like faster or cancel it somehow, kind of like Renekton's W or something. If that was kind of the thing at play or something. But anyway, we were talking about Kayn with the health, the tank encouragement earlier. Now the base damage on his Q when he's in Rost is going up by 1%, and this is definitely a huge buff. This is definitely more encouragement to go Bruiser. Even this going up by only 1% is a big deal, and if I'm not mistaken, this is the damage that occurs twice. So it's really actually like, instead of 10%, it's 12%. Let me make sure it's like, it goes off twice here. Look at his page real quick. Yeah, with each hit. So that is definitely a big nerf. You're going from 10% to 12% of the target's max health. And this cooldown, or this ability, has a very generous cooldown, so good days for Ross are ahead, that's for sure. And then we've got a nerf on the AD ratio on Umbral Trespass. Boo-hoo. This is really only a thing for the Shadow Assassin Rosses that are just like, you know, lazy assholes. Lazy asshole Arcane form upgrade. All the Chad Canes are definitely Rossed, that's for sure. Okie dokie, let's move on to Ornn. We've got a cooldown reduction on Searing Charge. I definitely like to see that. It doesn't do a ton of damage, and it's a really good CC ability that most people don't even like realize is going to knock them up, because it's in the heat of the fight, it's harder for people to even pay attention to where his Q is, or that he's going to impact a wall or terrain to knock you up. So it's cool to watch Ornn be able to make more plays, so that's a cool buff. Alright, we've got a pretty big nerf to Senna here. Now, they've messed with these numbers so many freaking times, it's insane. Now, the rate that she gets missed on minions she kills is going from 8% to almost 3%. Yeah, so whatever rationale there, or justification there was to try to play her as AD carry, now they're just... that's just even more completely out the window, because being able to collect mist consistently is kind of how she's supposed to like scale in the late game, since she doesn't gain bonus AD through growth. Or base AD through growth, I mean. So, yeah. It's not like she still can't like make gold and build items and all that shit. But yeah, this was absolutely like stupid. When's like the last time you even seen someone even trying to play her AD? Just absolutely silly. Alright, next we've got Shen here. And this is kind of just a change in the math of the breakpoints on the cooldown refunding when he hits someone and his passive comes up faster. This is actually a buff though. I moused over this earlier, and yeah, basically at 6, when he gets his ultimate, it's at 5 seconds. And now when he gets to level 6, it's at 4.5 seconds. So every point before that, it's actually slightly, it's a very small buff. But the cooldown, he's getting basically access to the cooldown refund earlier than he was before. So, bit of a buff. It's a very important skill that's very unsung. It deserves a lot of praise because it really helps him trade effectively in the early game by just basically being a free bone shield in terms of mastery. Free bone shield like every few seconds. And if you're really good about timing his Q, you can like negate so much harass with this. Even after playing Shen basically non-stop for like 14, 15 years, I still don't make use of his passive as well as I should. Pretty shameful, honestly, on my part. Okay, next up we got some rare changes to Sion, who kind of like Cho'Gath I think is another very balanced champion in the game. We've got a nerf to his early game Q ratio, which is quite disgusting, I gotta be honest. His level 1 Q damage can be absolutely absurd for a level 1 ability, but as if it wasn't silly enough, his max rank Q ratio got a buff, which I don't mind actually. As long as it's ultimately the same or stronger, I don't mind it too much if it's like a strong ability. And boy, is this like... this is like total AD, not bonus, which is why it's so fucking ridiculous. Pretty strong. And then his W got a lot of love here. Yeah, it did lose like 40 base damage, but with all the healthy builds, this huge boost in the health ratio, or maximum health ratio, is definitely nice. Going from 12 to 16%, yeah, you're definitely going to feel a buff like that, especially with Heartsteel. He's basically forced to build every game to scale. Alright, next up we've got Smolder, who I feel like every change this guy has gotten since his release has been kind of head-scratching. I guess I just have such a bizarre take on his weaknesses right now that doesn't really seem to be the direction that they want to go in terms of changing him. They've been very conservative with what they've chose to change on this guy, to be honest. I feel like he's a bit more problematic than that. But anyway, we've got a reversion of the thing they just did where they reduced the base amount on the threshold true damage back to 6.5% from 1. But now you no longer gain true damage from getting more stacks. What's not mentioned here is they still kept all of the ratios, the AD, AP, whatever the hell else that factors into boosting the true damage. You just don't get any more from collecting dragon stacks, which seems counterintuitive, but I guess they found, maybe they figured that was a better way of balancing it. Honestly, you barely ever see someone even be able to have the freedom to farm this up to get to the threshold to start doing the true damage with how unbelievably weak his early laning phase is. And make no mistake, I think this guy might have like the weakest laning phase in the game of all the like 80 carries. I mean, it's just pathetic. I gotta be honest, I'd rather have like who are they all the other really weak ones? Like Senna. There's a couple really bad ones. They can be really good in the late game, but have such an atrocious early game that it's like, Anyway, Senna's the only one that comes to mind right now. But I'd much rather have her, only because Senna is a late game powerhouse, if she can actually get off the drawing board. And then they went with another nerf, made his, this is his W, right? Yeah, his W is 10 units less fat. It is fat, but the ability also feels kind of garbage, so I don't really mind that it was fat. And then he got less movement speed on his thing that's supposed to be like a dash, essentially. This one's a real head scratcher that they would go in this direction. It already only lasts for like a second or something. Pretty silly. Especially considering they like nerfed it in the last patch to the point where it doesn't even like shoot anymore unless you get a bunch of stacks. Yep, I don't know. We got more attack speed for Tryndamere. Oh boy, oh boy. Let's see what else. We got a revert of a buff on Volibear. Now, moving too fast, or now the Q is giving him too much movement speed, whereas before, it wasn't giving him enough movement speed. Sometimes I don't know why they like, what conclusion they get to, where he obviously needed to be faster, and then immediately in the next patch, he needed to be slower. Alright, and let's see, we got a higher cooldown on his ultimate. That is actually probably a smart change. I honestly feel like his ultimate is actually one of like the most kind of overstated abilities in the game at level 6. Like, as far as rank 1 ultimates go, I feel like his ultimate is a little too overstated, to be honest. Like, we can take a quick look at it. Isn't it just like ridiculous base damage amongst all of the other crazy, ridiculous scaling, ridiculous base damage? Like, look at this. For a melee champion, like 300 base damage, ridiculous bonus AD scaling, and a silly AV ratio to boot, and and all of the steroids it gives him too. Bonus health, the turret duration, more attack range on his skills. I mean, and his slows. I mean, all of that at rank 1 is just so silly. He's such a cheese lord of a champion in the laning phase. Even if you know exactly what he does, he is like such an obnoxious champion to lane against for the first several levels. All he wants to do is cheese you, man. I still think he's well designed though, and he's a cool champ. Definitely cooler than what he was. Alright. That was a really fast 25 minutes. Okay, that's done with the champions. Now let's move on to some items. Got a lot of boring stuff in here. I'm not going to talk about a lot of this. talk about some of the interesting thing. We got a nerf to Bammy's Cinder. Be honest, I can't remember. You don't really see too many times where people actually just sit on this component for very long. Or at all. It's so weak, probably just prefer to have the other half of the component than just sit on this. So, yeah. Sucks that they nerf this, but not a huge deal. Because the damage did go up by 1. Alright. We got 5 less damage on the Warhammer. See if that pans out later. We got 10 less AP from Phoenix Codex. Yada yada yada. Anything else? Ability power on Haunting Guys is less attack damage on that. Yeah, nothing. Okay, here's something interesting. We've got increased critical strike multiplier on Infinity Edge from 40 to 50%. Honestly, they've dicked with this thing so many times, I couldn't honestly tell you at this point how close this is to when it was like peak strong. They'd have to tell me how close it is to being back to 250. Because it was 250, 225, 215, 210, and now you need Infinity Edge just to do double damage again. Because not too long ago, they reduced conventional critical strikes from double damage, which is like, the gaming constant in the universe, to only 175% damage. So, I don't know. Who the hell knows? Obviously, I feel like with all these nerfs to like the Infinity Edge, though, with all the other utility of items, you don't even honestly see Infinity Edge in like, full builds anywhere near as much as you used to. Whereas before, it was a staple. For years, you just rushed this, But doing more damage just isn't enough utility. At least doing damage in this kind of subtle way. Alright, we've got more armor pen for the armor pen items. More damage from the Void Quickblade. Let's see. We got the, which one is this? One of the support items. Faster quest. Less gold for minions. Serrated Dirk loses 5 damage. That's honestly probably one of the more impactful nitpicky damage things, honest, because that's kind of probably a big thing mid lane for sure. Alright, and then the movement speed on the Solstice thingamabobber. Yeah. Less movement speed and not as fast. Gotta be honest, that one doesn't really seem to be one of the more popular choices. Bit of another change we got here for Spectral's Cowl, one of the older items in the game. Now it's no longer really a counter item, where if you were dealt magic damage, or whatever the hell damage, you gained a big boost of base health regen. Now they're basically making that 50% weaker, but now it's just on 100% of the time, so I'm not sure how I feel about that, and it got a health nerf to boot. I kind of liked it as this kind of like niche, kind of anti-harass thing, where if you took damage, you got this big boost of whatchamajig on. But now just giving it like being on all the time, I mean, in a way it's got to be more powerful, but in a way it also feels like it's like less powerful. Definitely pros and cons. Alright, the Brutalizer, forget what that even builds into since they brought it back. Whatever, less lethality just starting out. Anyway, anything else? We got the World Atlas, faster upgrade but less money like the other thing. Well, that's it for the items. Now we got something with these monsters. Yeah, these Void Grubs, I gotta be honest, I have not been really going out of my way to interact with the Void Grubs since they put them in the game. I have to make an admission. When they kind of add something this big to the game, my initial instinct is to kind of avoid it until I kind of learn about it second, third, fourth hand, or gain peripheral knowledge about it before I start interacting with it. So I tend to just boycott all new systems in the game. as like kind of a habit. Alright, anyway. Upon a Void Grub dying, each Void Grub now heals for 30% of maximum health plus 30% of their missing health. Each. Okay, so when you kill one of them, they gain more health. Whereas before, when one of them died, they gained a shield equal to less health. So I guess this is going to health gain decays over 10 seconds. Well, just by the nature of this being more health than the shield, yeah. I guess this is going to make the grubs a little harder to take. And I guess they do seem kind of easy to take because it feels like your laner disappears for 5 seconds and all 3 Void Grubs go down or something, so whatever. And oh, cool. Well, that's it. We wrapped that up pretty fast, only about 31 minutes or so. Well, that does it for 14.6. I hope Jason's lazy ass gets back in action so I don't have to do these and talk to myself anymore, but I don't mind too much. It just kind of goes by pretty quick. Alright, well, I'll see you guys next patch. Sorry this one took a few extra days to come out late. You guys take care, though.